Is anybody there? Somebody comment down below. They've changed things again around YouTube on me here. Hoping they've got this thing up and running. They're always updating things. I don't know why they can't just leave it alone for a second. Is everybody seeing me here? What's up, Miss Carol? Mr. Morton. Bear with me here. I'm trying to get all this stuff set up. They've changed the computer deals around here, and I don't know why. All right, I think we got her. I think we got it set up now, maybe. Why did they do this? It's always something. All right. Okay. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some Major League Fishing. You guys have probably been watching this. I know I have. The whole MLF on Chickamauga. I've been watching live as much as I can in between work and everything else, but I'm noticing a lot of guys, they're all over the lake doing a whole bunch of different things. I just wanted to kind of hop on here tonight. I know it's been a little while since we did a live stream, and just kind of get y'all's thoughts. We'll go through, do some question and answer, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about some of the patterns that I'm seeing, the guys using, the successful patterns, kind of some general locations and things like that. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to let a few more people get on before we really get rocking and rolling here. I know I started the stream really early. I was just confused by YouTube's once again updating everything on here for me for some reason, but let's see here. What's up, Kurt? What's up, Tyler? Anybody got any opening questions? Any comments about Major League Fishing being on Chickamauga Lake? What are y'all thinking? What's up, Mr. Rich? Anybody hear me? Hola, hola. Got no questions. All right. Well, let's pop into a little bit of some study time. Look at that craziness right there. We're going to jump into Navionics here real quick. Okay, so I don't know who else was just noticing locations. I noticed as soon as I was watching some of these guys fishing, I'm like, oh, I fished there. Oh, I fished that spot before. Yeah, Peggy, that's right. There was a bunch of guys went upriver. There was a bunch of fish caught, and we'll talk about that. I think it was Cliff, is his name. He caught, he whacked him for a solid hour and a half this morning. Got almost, I think right at 60 pounds in just the first period, which that might be some kind of record. I'm not sure. But location, he was fishing. He was actually up here. He was way upriver and not very far from the launch. You know, these guys are coming out of Richland Creek right over here at Dayton Boat Dock and Grill. They're coming up through here, and he was just fishing way up here into the Moon Slough area, Moon Island area, and these little backwaters. And what you've got is an obvious travel route. You know, you've got this channel that runs in here, and you've got all these spawning backwaters. And that's important when we're up on the upper part of the lake. Remember, it's more like a river system up here. It's got really steep drop-offs, drop straight off into the channel. So when these backwaters finally get water in them, you know, when we're at Winter Pool, which we were just a week ago, when you're low water like that, those fish really can't push into these backwaters. There's just not enough water. In fact, a lot of this stuff he's fishing up there would have been dry land. Like all this stuff would have been dry land here. But when the water pushed up, those fish they're sitting there at these mouths, and they're just waiting to get up there and spawn. So as soon as that water pushes in there, they feel that, and they push really quickly up in there with it. And so he's fishing around this general area right here, and you can see you got these little creek channels and ditch channels coming in, and those fish are going to set up on little hard spots around that area, just kind of waiting to spawn. Now, some fish are probably going to be already post-spawn, and some are pre-spawn. I was amazed lately how many post-spawn fish that I'm actually catching right now. It's pretty crazy. But he really, I mean, he wailed on them. But if y'all notice there, his bites just completely died off after the morning. And that's something I notice a lot this time of year. The fish tend to feed, in the wintertime and in cold water, it seems like they feed a lot during the middle part of the day. But as you get into this warmer period, get around the spawn, get into the summer, they start to feed during what I call lower light conditions, usually first thing in the morning, later in the afternoon. And that's where we've been seeing these fish kind of doing their deal. Is first thing in the morning, later afternoon. Rich asked what the water temperature is right now. It really varies depending where you are on the lake. Some of these creeks after the rain, they're pushing water directly off the mountain. They're going to be upper 50s. And then some of these main lake pockets that really have a chance to warm up to have dirtier water, they're going to be almost 70 degrees. There's a big shift in temperature. But at this point, the end of March, a huge wave of fish went on to spawn. They went on bed. A lot of fish are post-spawn already. There's another giant wave that's moving up right now. So a lot of these guys, they would be bed fishing if they could, but some of this dirtier water, I think, is keeping them from doing that. But a lot of guys are bed fishing. They're able to see these fish going down the bank or at least fish in areas. You saw Edwin Evers down in Chester Frost. He was back there on those stumps, and what he was doing is pitching to stumps, and each one of those stumps, probably has a male on it, and that's what he was doing, is catching all those little fish off of there. Sorry, I keep drinking things, guys. My allergies are working up. The pollen is crazy out there, and so I feel like I'm always thirsting to death right now. But these fish, they're pushing up into these little backwater areas. A lot are post-spawn, a lot are pre-spawn. I think, especially up in here in the northern part of the river, a lot of these fish I don't feel like have gone on as much. So I think more fish would probably be pre-spawn as you get higher or north in the river system here. Yeah, Jordan Lee, he and Mark Rose, they put on a clinic in an area that a lot of you guys probably know in Saudi Creek. Push back in here in Saudi Creek, and they were fishing an area back here. I'm not going to point it out because I know a few guys probably wouldn't want me to do that, but there's an area here in Saudi Creek that those guys, they pushed and caught a ton of fish in yesterday's match. It was Mark Rose and Jordan Lee, especially down in Saudi Creek. I noticed Ott Defoe down here in the Possum Creek area and Dave Lefevre. They were both fishing a lot of stuff in Possum Creek. Got cleaner water in Possum and Saudi, and I think they were actually able to key in on a few of those bedding fish there. One thing I've noticed, though, with these guys is a lot of these fish catches are happening early. They're happening before the live starts. And I'm wondering how much of that is them going to their juiciest and best areas in the morning before that live starts so that people aren't seeing it and beating it up. Because it was amazing to me how many people that weren't spectating, that were just going right behind these guys and fishing. So they would pull up and try to fish a spot, and then as soon as they leave, somebody else come in there and fish it. I was actually out there yesterday in Possum Creek. I saw Dave Lefevre especially running all over the place, and Chris and I, we just tried to stay out of the way until they got done with their deal, and then we fished the afternoon. I think that's probably the most courteous thing that you can do with these guys is, try to stay out of their way. One big player, I saw Aaron Martens catching some great big old fish, and he was up here in Mud Creek, which there's been tons of people fishing Mud Creek lately. There's a lot of fish in it, but it is so beat up, and it was amazing to me that he was able to put together such a big limit of fish, even though they were so beat up in that creek over there. Rich, Key Baits. Well, Aaron Martens, we just talked about him. He was throwing a chatterbait. He's throwing a bladed jig. I saw him throwing what looked like a spinnerbait at one point. He's throwing moving baits, but he was offshore a little bit. He's not fishing around the bank over here. He's fishing on these flats. And the same thing with Clint. What is his name? I'm horrible. Cliff Crochet. However you say that. Cliff, okay, back over here. Pow. All right. When he was up here in Moon Slough, he's fishing offshore too. He's fishing these flats, these little areas that have hard spots on them, these areas that have sparse hydrilla that's still in there. So when you're doing that, he's fishing a lipless bait. I'm not sure what kind of lipless he was throwing. I couldn't really get a good look at it, but everybody knows the lipless is really good on Chickamauga. And he probably could have done pretty much the same pattern as Aaron Martens. And they might expand a little bit. Aaron, you might see him next time throwing a lipless. You might see Cliff throwing that bladed jig, but those kind of moving baits in those kind of areas can be key. What they're catching is they're catching fish that are coming in to spawn, so they're pre-spawn fish that are staging, and they have also staging fish that are post-spawn that are pushing their way out. And I think that's probably going to be the most successful patterns. The guys that can find fish that are coming and going on those little highways, and they're grouping up. You can get those schooling fish, you can get well in a hurry. But I think it's going to also boil down to, you noticed Aaron Martens over here was catching a much better average size fish. And the same thing with Michael Neal. He was fishing, some of the, let's zoom out here, some of the stuff down here around Harrison Bay. There we go, Harrison Bay Islands area. I saw him down here fishing around this stuff. Again, schooling fish. He's not going for ones and twos and catching just a fish here, a fish there. He's catching just tons and tons of, schooling up fish. You're able to get back there, find a few schools, catch a few fish out of those schools, rotate and find those fish and continue to beat on them. And that's going to be a more consistent bite, in my opinion, than going down and trying to rely on bedding fish. So my strategy, if I was fishing this event, what I would do is find a place where early in the morning, just like Aaron Martens, just like Cliff, just like Octafo did, where they found a spot where right away they could go ahead and catch a lot of fish that were kind of schooled up, very active fish, moving baits. But one thing I noticed that Cliff didn't do is he didn't transition out of that. He continued to throw that lipless all throughout the day. I didn't really see him switch up until the last few minutes. And he went and flipped a little bit. But to me, that's not effective strategy on the long term. What I would have done is started practicing, doing a lot of other things, trying to find fish like Edwin Evers is catching. Evers and Fletcher Stryock doing two different things, but they're fishing for ones and twos. Same thing with Mark Rose, Jordan Lee, those guys that are kind of going down the bank. They talked about water coming up. Well, the water, as it rises, it gets into these brush piles. A lot of the cover in the lake is actually getting water on it now, so those fish can actually get in that brush pile and be comfortable there. So if you go down through there as the day progresses, after that schooling fish bite slows down, it starts to get, sun gets higher, gets more afternoonish, well, then I'm going to those docks that Hackney was flipping. I'm going to those laydowns and heavy structures that Fletcher Stryock was flipping. I'm going to do something like that so I can continue to add fish to the score tracker. As you get further on in today, the sun gets really high. Maybe those fish on the docks and the brush piles slow down a little bit. At that point, transition, that's when you go to your bed fish. You pull up on your bed fish. That's a fish. It doesn't matter if she's active or not. Same thing that Edwin Evers, you noticed as the day progressed, when everybody else kind of fell down and we're not catching as many fish, Edwin continued to just get, one after the other, just here nickel and diamond all day on those stumps. And what he was doing is he's fishing the stumps way in the back of Chester Frost. He's back here on this stump flat. And so what happens, those fish staged and then they pulled up, and you got all those bucks that are up there. Now, it's hard for me to tell. He caught pretty much exclusively buck bass all day. So that means one of two things. One thing, it could be that they've just come up, they've started making beds, and those great big giants are going to swing up there. The big females will be up there tomorrow, and somebody will catch them in there. Or it could also mean that those females came and went really fast before he even got there. Those fish don't stick around very long. They'll come and go, and he could just be fishing for males that are just guarding the nest at that point. Let's see here. Randy says it was a half-ounce Bill Lewis that Cliff was throwing. Yeah, Eric says that Mud Creek was on fire. It really has been really good, but I'm telling you, there's so many people going in and out of there. It's getting beat up so badly. It's hard to say if that's an effective long-term strategy or not. I think those offshore fish that Aaron was on, though, they'll stick around pretty good. John says he's got a tournament the 27th. Curious if the conditions come at that time. Well, I mean, the 27th, you're going to have a lot of post-spawn fish. They're ahead of schedule this year. Typically, you would have a lot of fish still going on to bed towards the end of this month, but I think this year in particular, there's going to be a lot of them that are, that are already gone. So you're going to have post-spawn fish. You're going to be fishing ledges, fishing fish that are just getting back out to main river ledges. Probably also there'll be a good bite transitioning out of the creeks and a lot of secondary banks and things. You know, you can flip, you can throw shaky head and stuff like that. Yeah, Randy, that's right. They get beat to absolute death. I tried to fish up there a few days ago. Not, if I say a few days ago, it's been, gosh, a week and a half ago. Pulled up into that area, and it was like a highway going in and out of Mud Creek. It's really narrow through there, and I said, heck with it. Ended up fishing down some ledges and caught some fish. It was all right, but I'm telling you, it was crazy for a minute there. Any other questions about specific anglers you have a question about, or any other patterns? I noticed a lot, like Fletcher. Well, let's talk about Greg Hackney from yesterday. He put the hurting on some good-sized fish, flipping a jig, flipping heavy cover, flipping dirtier water. And I noticed a lot of the damage that he ended up doing was along some of these docks down behind this island below 60 here. Getting up there. And that used to be a really good area, but it's been so mudded out for the last few years. They've been killing the grass back there so bad. But he was able to get a few fish that just kind of pushed back up into there. I don't know how long he ended up staying in that area, but that's one of the places I noticed. I noticed Fletcher Stryock, fishing some docks actually on this side over near my grandparents' lake house over here. And then he was also, I noticed Fletcher pushed way back into Hiawassee area too, into some of these cuts and things, and was fishing some of the laydowns and brush through there. Kind of the surprising thing for me is, Ott Defoe, I expected him to do really well in this tournament. Local-ish guy, I should say. And a guy that's coming off a big win, coming off the classic victory. I expect him to do it just as well as he's doing, but I also expected a lot from Wesley Strader, Jacob Wheeler. I expected a lot from Andy Morgan. And those guys really, it's like I don't know if they're a fishing history. I know Michael Neal did really well too. He's another local guy, but it seemed like, 2/3 of the local guys didn't really hammer them as much as I thought they were. I don't know if it was, again, fishing history, not really fishing the moment, but it didn't seem like they could put it together, really. Jacob Wheeler, I noticed the announcer later in the day was saying that he was running all over the place and trying a bunch of patterns. And that's kind of what I saw, too. It's like he was all over the place, fishing a million different things, 100,000 miles an hour, and it's like nothing would ever quite work for him for some reason. So I'm not really sure why that was. How's Ike doing? I didn't really notice that. Let's pop over here. Let's look at it. I think he did fish today. Let's drop down here. Ike and Ellie, where are you, bro? Maybe he fished yesterday. I don't see him on there. Well, if anybody knows, post that on there. How's Ike and Ellie doing at the moment? Or as my wife calls him, Mike and Ellie. Let's see here. What else we got for questions on here, fellas? I noticed there was some damage getting done around Hiawassee Island area too. But it seems like kind of the main things I saw, the thing I really like, and I feel like it's going to win this, is the guys that can get offshore. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean deep. It could be really shallow offshore stuff. But the guys that can pull out there, find groups of fish where they can really hammer on those fish and catch, multiples up to 10, 15, 20, 30 fish out of a school. That's the guy that's going to get way ahead of everyone else. But other key patterns I think that are going to play, especially if that guy can do later in the day, is again that flipping bite. Flipping new cover as the water gets into it. Those fish are going to continue to rise with it. I've noticed a lot of bait. There's so much more life in the shallows right now when I was out there. Little bluegill around the banks and things like that. And it's really, the lake is coming alive. They should really post some huge weights. I'll be surprised if they don't shatter some records, as well as Cliff did early in the morning. They should be breaking some records that hadn't been broke before. See some more questions in there. What's some patterns that you think that they should be doing? Or is there anything else that you guys saw that I didn't notice as far as a pattern? Probably jog my memory so we can talk about it. Oh, another one. I didn't really talk. I talked a little bit about Mark Rose and Jordan Lee kind of crushing some fish that were seemed like they were betters, but also a lot of fish that are staging. And what I saw them doing, I saw Alt Defoe doing this as well, is going around and pitching a drop shot. They're pitching that drop shot around. They're pitching a small shaky head around these laydowns and things like that. And what that does, it gives you a couple options. When you have that really light weighted bait or that bait that stays higher in the water column, it can be really good to get those cruising fish, the fish that are not active, but they're up there. They're kind of cruising around. They're looking for a mate. They're looking for a good area to post up and spawn. A lot of times it's notoriously hard to get those fish to bite, and sometimes you don't see them. But pitching around a little bait like that, you're going to not only, one, catch a bunch of bank running bass, small buck bass and things like that are probably making beds or are already on a little bed, but you're also going to get those big females that are finicky. And so I think you notice that Mark Rose, he caught a few nice fish. Ott Defoe caught a few nice fish. I saw Ott yesterday actually throwing the old floating worm, which is an awesome pattern. Again, it's moving. It gets those little buck bass aggressive. It gets those bank running fish that are up and in there aggressive. And it will also get you those big cruising fish. And what he was doing a two-pronged approach. He was throwing that floating worm around, and if he had one of those big fish turn on it or swipe at it or just show themselves, he would stop what he was doing and he would pick up a lot more natural looking, look like a 6, something like that, Cinco or Ocho or something like that, wacky rig, and he would flip that in there beyond that fish and bring it back, and that's even more subtle bait just falling right in that fish's mouth. It seems like this time of the year you get a little bit finessey with those fish, and you want something that's got a slower fall. A lot of times instead of using maybe a half-ounce jig or a half-ounce shaky head, I'll use a 3/8 ounce jig and a 1/4 ounce or lighter shaky head to really get those fish to fire up. It's like they want something coming down and hanging in the water column as long as possible. Matt asked when the top water bite really turns on. And honestly, right about now is a perfect time to start throwing that top water bait. Especially if you get back in this area, you get a big pre-spawners up there, mean, little ripple on the water. I love throwing a small, a small buzz bait. Saudi Custom Tackle makes a buzz bait for me with a little smaller blade. I'll throw a swim bait on there instead of a skirted trailer or skirted, body on it, and reel that thing really slowly across these points and on these flats and around stumps. Really, that area that Evan, what's his name? Edwin Evers. I don't know what's going on with me. Edwin Evers, where he was fishing, throwing that little buzzbait like that would be perfect around the stumps that are just barely almost, out of the water, but just barely submerged. Cover that you can see with a little bit of wind can be really good. Another bait that's excellent first part of the year that's not intrusive and that really stays in front of the fish is a popper. You can walk a popper just like you would a spook, but it makes a lot less noise. I like to use one without rattles and get those fish to come up and eat it. Another top water is a frog. You can skip that frog around. I noticed if you looked at some of the footage today, even more so than yesterday when I was out, there's so much pollen on the water, and what that does is it creates what people call pollen mats, which is when you get a thick, nasty line of pollen on there. It looks like something scummy or wrong with the water, but you got to think of that as it protects the fish's eyes from the sun, creates shade, and directly underneath that pollen will be those fish. Now, some of those fish will be on beds, some of them will just be up and cruising, but you can throw that frog in there, walk it real slow around that stuff, around cover, and really catch some big fish doing that. Rich asked if anyone was throwing big swim baits. I didn't really see anybody throwing one at all. I caught quite a few fish yesterday on a Zoom swimmer, that 5.5-inch Zoom swimmer. They were crushing that thing. They were crushing a scrounger, and I don't know. I don't know why, they're throwing a bladed jig, but I don't know why a hollow body swim bait or, a normal mid-range swim bait is not a part of the lineup, especially, like where Cliff was fishing or Aaron Martens was fishing. When those fish are schooled up like that, a lot of times you bring that lipless through there. They've seen 100 million lipless baits. They've seen 100 million chatterbaits go through there. You throw in just a swim bait by itself, and they hadn't seen that. And a lot of times you can just smoke a few extra fish out of that school or get it, fired off like it wasn't before. Let's see here. Any more questions on there? But that's what I would be looking at right now. I'm telling you, these guys, I would be looking for fish on these main lake points, coming back into creeks and stuff like that. A lot of fish will be transitioning out. A lot of fish will still be transitioning in. So finding fish potted up on these secondary points and things like that, and finding fish potted up on flats. To me, the guys that didn't spend their time looking for things like that really are not going to stand a chance in the long farm or the long haul on this tournament. The guys that think that they're going to go down and catch sight fish and nickel and dime fish along the bank, they're just not going to win this. The guy that can do all the above is the person that's going to win this tournament. You need to find a guy that can, I think Mark Rose is a great pick. Ott Defoe is a great pick. Michael Neal is a great pick for doing it. Aaron Martens is a great pick for doing it. Guys that can fish the moment, they can get out there, find those schooled up fish in the morning and beat on those fish in the morning. Go ahead and catch, a big weight just like Cliff did. And then as the day progresses, switch over, start flipping that cover, start, using that small shaky head, using that floating worm, and then just adjusting throughout the day. But to me, the bedding fish should be kind of the last part of that equation in order to catch these fish. That should be the last thing that you're going to once everything else dies off. Then you go catch your 2 or 3 nice fish that you've got on bed, and you keep the day alive. But I think they're close, and it could be a strategy thing too. Could be them not beating up these fish, because the way they do this is a little different than other major league fishing events. We've had the 2 kind of, I guess, preliminary rounds here. We've had 40 anglers in each round, and now they're going to go. The next one, I think, is going to be kind of more of a cutoff. They're going to start narrowing down the field, and then they'll end up in sudden death. And then at some point, everybody's weight's going to go back to 0 and not be cumulative, and that's when you get towards the championship. So by saving fish now, you can make that cut and then still have fish to beat up on during that point. So a guy that has a big weight like Cliff, the guy that has a huge weight right now, he can carry that over for his cumulative weight the next time he fishes. And so by not beating up those fish, that could be a good strategy. Rich says the Hog Farmer stand-up Ned heads are the bomb. They are awesome, and that would be a great option for a bed fishing bait, especially shortening up the a smaller Ned style presentation, or a small crawl on the back of that could be deadly. Because again, another one that would be awesome on there is that Tube X. Caleb Lutzer gave me some of those things. Those are awesome. It's like a tube. You can put a little rattle in there. It creates the air pocket that a tube does. Push out bubbles and stuff. You can put a little bit of Alka-Seltzer in there. It'll push out bubbles. But something like that, really small, compact, that you can flip in that bed. That fish comes down and they just get hooked. They don't have anything else to get. Can be awesome. Anybody else having any success on anything? Anybody want to share some knowledge or ask another question on there? I feel bad for the people that are probably just now logging on to watch because we started 30 minutes ago. But I apologize for anyone that's just now getting on here. We started at about 6:30 because I couldn't figure out how to work the new YouTube system here. So if you're just showing up, you might have to go back and rewatch a little bit. What are some patterns that you guys saw that I didn't see? I mean, we talked about floating worms. We talked about, smaller shaky heads. We talked about the drop shot. We talked about some of the moving baits like the bladed jig. We talked about the lipless. But what were some other things? Did anybody else notice anybody? We talked about the flipping baits and things like that. I didn't really notice much else beyond that, to be honest with y'all. What we got? Where's everybody at? And if y'all want to, share the Share the video link on Facebook or something real quick. That'll help get some more people in, kind of get us going here. I think we've only got 20 something people watching right now or something like that. What water temperature up here? Oh, geez. Water temperature is up in the 40s in Pennsylvania. Good Lord. Yeah, we're down here. I actually answered that question a little earlier, but down here in some of the creeks where you got mountain water coming in after this rain, you have the lowest temperatures, and that's going to be in the upper 50s. The highest temperatures I'm seeing right now are more like 70 in a lot of the dirtier creeks or some of the dirtier pockets and backwaters. Now, talking about areas, we'll kind of go into the spawn itself and kind of where these fish will tend to spawn. So let's go down here. Where are we at? There we go. We're going to Chester Frost because everybody knows about Chester Frost. All right, so what we've been talking about in some of these live streams is how these fish have been working their way towards these secondary points and secondary banks. And they've been hitting these humps and things like that. And they're working these creek channels, what they call a highway. You know, ditches, creek channels, these are all highways that the fish use to pull into backwater areas to spawn. So as they push through these little backwaters, they're going to end up on these spawning flats. And it's funny on this, you can pretty much see they're all highlighted in blue where it says shallow. In Chester Frost back here, you've got these huge, expansive stump flats down through here. And that's what Edwin Evers was fishing. He's pulling up onto these stump flats, and he's looking for those stumps. You can see the little dark area in the water where that stump is. And those fish, those buck bass, they'll get right up against that root system in that hard bottom area, and they'll circle out, and they'll fan out a nest. And what'll happen is the females will go up there and, of course, get with them, and they'll do their thing, and then that's where the fish will be sitting, though. But that's where they end up. So as they post-spawn, it's the same thing. They're moving out. But it's interesting to me, a lot of times, like the pre-spawn movement I see, a lot of it's not really food-oriented. So what'll happen is these fish, maybe the shad, you'll start marking bait fish and stuff in the middle part of the creek, like this right here. There'll be a bunch of shad and things like that hanging out here. That's where all your bait balls are. But all of a sudden, all your big females are beyond that. They've pushed past it already, and they're staging to spawn. When they're post-spawn, it's almost the complete opposite. For a few days, they kind of linger around. They get near the around the cover that's sitting there. They don't want to do much of anything. But as soon as that kind of little short window ends, those fish will immediately start gorging themselves on. I notice a lot of times big fish around here, they'll gorge on crappie, they'll gorge on big gills, and then as they push out, you know, there's a lot of fish that stay in the creeks. Those fish will continue to be on kind of a panfish diet, and the fish that are pushing out, which is probably the majority of the fish, is going to push out to the main lake. They'll be all of a sudden, like I was saying, in the middle part of the creek where all that bait's been at, all of a sudden like on these kind of humps and these points that stick way out on the tips of that, you'll start seeing those potted up fish, you know, schools of fish that you can catch, you know, like this area right here, like this area right here. And that's what I think those guys should be targeting in the morning. They should be getting out there, getting the pre-spawn fish that are coming in that are still gorging, and then getting those fish that are post-spawn that need to eat and that are sitting right there. That's what I would be doing in the morning time, then pushing back beyond that. Dang, Peggy said y'all were catching them on a rig last week. That's crazy. I thought the rig bite was pretty much dead here, but it makes sense. You know, there's still a lot of fish that have kind of been hanging out offshore, a lot of fish that have been hanging out deeper. And I will say that's another thing that's been weird about this year is I've noticed that a lot of the fish have stayed deep. You know, there's been a lot of fish that have just been hanging out on the river ledges. I think it's because the water stayed down for so long. They've been hanging out there. And then there was, of course, a lot of fish that were way back in the pockets. So there was literally days I would go out and be catching fish in 23, 24 foot of water and then turn around and go as far as you could get back into a pocket with your trolling motor, hitting the gravel and stuff, and then casting as far as you can into inches of water and catching fish. So it's been a strange year. Matt says, how fast will they move out to the ledges after the spawn? Those river fish move out very fast. It's a lot quicker transition a lot of times than it is in the pre-spawn. So, you know, pre-spawn, it might take them a while to get back into the creeks. Post-spawn, they jump out on those ledges pretty quick. And it's funny because I've noticed a lot of fish will pull out, they'll be on those ledges, and then they'll actually pull in again real quick for the shad spawn. You know, the shad spawn will be going on not too far. I guess it'll be early this year too. I bet it'll be sometime in May this year, the shad will start spawning. But you'll also see the bluegill spawn, and a lot of crappie are already on beds, and that's going to be the big meals for those monster females, you know, that are coming off of bed. They're probably be eating those crappie through there. Lampreys. I've noticed a lot of lampreys. You saw that in some of the live footage too, a lot of the big lampreys, so it's time to get out some of those big shaky head worms also when you start seeing those lampreys hitting the deck. Any more questions about the spawn or anything like that? We'll kind of go through. I will tell y'all what I've been kind of catching fish on lately. A lot of the fish I feel like I've been catching, I've been on a lipless still. I'm still getting those kind of pre-spawn fish on that lipless, and I've been using it as kind of a searching tool like we've talked about in the past. Cruising around, I find those fish, then I'll throw that Zoom swimmer out there. That Hog Farmer trimmer with a pintail has been awesome. That thing's catching the heck out of fish. I tried a drop shot the other day. It really didn't work for me on some schooling fish out there, but that's really been kind of the main deal. Has been you know, smaller swim baits and lipless and moving baits, you know, occasionally a jerk bait or, you know, a smaller crankbait like a DT6 or a shad wrap and stuff like that. What kind of river bars do they spawn on, Randy asked? That's a good question. I will show you a river bar that I have seen them spawn really well on. All right, here's 60. That's Highway 60 running across there. And I've noticed Blythe's Ferry, this particular type of a river bar, and I think this is the key to it, is you have to have a part of a river bar that is protected from the current. As you can see right here, you've got Blythe's Ferry, so you got this ferry crossing right here and then a bridge abutment. So all this current from the main river, and it is substantial that runs down through, all this current cannot impact this part of the flat over here. It has to go around. And so what does that do? Well, as that current comes around here, it'll eventually work its way onto the flat. It eventually goes down and kind of impacts the flat there. However, all this kind of area right here is protected from that current. If anything, you get a little bit of a backwash right there. And so what that allows, you know, it's protected from a north wind also. This is north going this way. So when you go upriver, that's north. It's protected from a north wind. It's just a perfect spawning area, and I've seen fish spawn all over that. One of the keys, too, is you need that shell-type bar. It tends to work a little better. I've noticed if there's an occasional stump out through there, if there's an occasional bigger rock, you know, the fish tend to spawn around that. Honestly, you know, the TBA or TWRA would probably be it'd be beneficial for them to actually go along some of these bars and place some spawning structures, you know, like a tire type structure or a place for these fish to get up and spawn, because they would stage on it and pre-spawn, they would spawn on it, and it would also give them a place to kind of hide out in irregularity whenever you get grass on it in the summertime. So I think it would help the lake out. You have more designated spawning areas for the fish on the main lake as well. That's the kind of flat I look for. Another types of flats here, you know, again, you got major current coming down this way, major current coming down this way on Hawaii Island. Well, any of these little drains out through here that are protected are going to be major spawning areas, you know, areas like this up into here. That's still main lake, it's still flat. Again, this one right here, see how this is all protected? You've got kind of this almost like a peninsula running way out right here. Well, all this current's going to kind of dish out right in this area, but back up in this part of the flat, you're going to be fine. As soon as you find some hard bottom, reed edges, you know, anything, reed edges, maybe pea gravel, shell, those kind of areas are going to be prime for those fish to spawn on. A lot of times secondary troughs that go up into a flat like this one right here can be really good areas for those fish to spawn. A lot of fish spawn main lake, a lot of fish spawn onto, you know, backwaters. I would consider these backwaters, you know, like the Moon Slough area, all these little backwaters. You can see it's kind of interesting the way this does. You have these individual little cuts and sloughs, but you also have this main backwater that runs across the river here. and those fish will pile into those things and spawn. So all those type areas. And I just encourage anybody, if you guys are out there, you know, if you're coming down to Chickamauga, you're coming to trophy hunt, it's a great time to do it. It's a great time to catch a big fish on bed, but take care of that fish. If you're going to get and do this kind of thing during the spawning, if you're going to specifically target a spawning fish, as soon as you catch that fish, have your live well already filled up. It's warmer out there right now, so you need to have some kind of additive in there. You need to have some ice in there as well to keep that water kind of a stable temperature. You want it to be sitting around that 65, 70 degrees, and it'll bake if you're not careful. As soon as you catch that fish, stick her in there, turn the aerator on, and you're good. At that point, get your camera ready, get everything you need, your scale out, get it ready, leave her in the live well, pull her out, take a couple quick pictures, put her back in the live well. Once you get your scale ready, pull her out again, put her on the scale real fast, put her back in the live well. As soon as you're done with all that, do your high-fiving and get her back in the water. There's no reason to take a fish off a bed back to the ramp right now. No, guys, if you're fishing for bedding fish, there's no reason that you should be taking 5 fish to go take a picture at the end of the day. Take your pictures as you go, one at a time, and get those fish on bed. You might be able to get out main lake and still catch a bunch of big fish on a point that are pre-spawned. Cool. Put 5 in the box real quick and take a picture. That's awesome. But don't be keeping a big sack of fish off of beds right now. It's bad for the lake, and it's just poor form as a fisherman, in my opinion. I'm not a big proponent of bed fishing. I don't like it all that much, but it's more of a personal thing for me. I'm just impatient. I don't really like fishing for fish off of beds as much. But if you're gonna do it right and take care of the fish, because this lake is getting absolutely hammered with tournament pressure, hammered with weekend angler pressure, hammered with guys that are local tournament anglers, hammered by guys coming from out of town to come catch the fish of their lifetime. It's all awesome, it's all cool, but we got to take care of it. Otherwise, it's going to have a really big downturn in the years to come. See, your Michelle Weathers says, do you fish dam to dam? Yes, I do. It's a huge lake, so I fish specific areas dam to dam, but I do, fish from one end of the lake to the other. I will say during the spawn and that time, I personally kind of like to get up here with these river fish, or I like to get about mid-lake. I'm not as big a proponent on the south end of the lake, but of course, what's his name? The guy that's really good with the frog from yesterday that was leading it forever. I can't remember his name. But anyway, he was down south. Randy says he can't wait for the ledge bite. Yeah, I agree. That first ledge bite is super fun. I would highly recommend that over bed fishing any day of the week. Matt says, I bet the ledges are like parking lots. Yes, especially as the summer progresses, the ledges out there, they get... And that's the thing. You hear a lot of the older tournaments that came through here, the guys, would say the lake fish is small, and that's true. There's only, if you look at the lake as a whole, you got a lot of river sections, and you got fewer areas where the lake kind of spreads out and has these bigger, expansive flats. In those bigger, expansive areas seems like is where a lot of the better ledge fishing is. And so what that does is it limits the amount of major schools of fish on the lake. And so you have what you call community holes, and there's a limited number of community holes and the same number of boats that want to go out and catch fish. So you got guys stumbling all over top of each other and just beating the heck out of the same fish over and over. So it pays to be able to do something a little bit different. In the summertime, if you can find those smaller, isolated schools, it seems like that's a better option. And that's really fun part about the early part of the, and really the later part of the ledge fishing period as well. As the fish are in the migratory phase, what happens is you got smaller schools of fish. When I say smaller, I'm talking anywhere between 5 to 25, 30 fish, smaller schools of fish grouped up that you can actually get and target that way. And what they're doing is they're migrating to those areas where you'll have those mega schools. A mega school, I mean, some of the schools on these lakes are literally thousands of fish deep. It's insane when you go over them. Rojas, thank you, Randy. It was Dean Rojas was the guy, and he was fishing way down here, past all this, past Chester Frost, past Harrison Bay. I saw him back in Booker T. And then, what's this name of this slough over here? I don't know what it is. Anyway, back here in that little marina area. One place I saw a wheeler was, Harrison Bay's right here, this major marina back here. He was getting in behind those docks, which I've never done before. It was a really smart idea. He was bed fishing behind those docks, but I think either he had a wave of fish that he saw up there that had already come and gone, or they just really weren't there like he thought they were going to be. Because it didn't seem like he really stuck around with that. They kind of got him. Seemed like he was spinning a little bit after he left that area. Honestly, he was running around pretty quick and not really sticking with anything super long. Saw guys fishing around these islands as well. Matt says, what kind of different or obscure places on the ledge do I look for to separate myself from the crowds? That's a really good point. All right, so let's go here to kind of a community hole type area. Anytime you see these big underwater reef-like or island-like structures, that's areas that anyone can find. Cutbacks, where you have a secondary channel coming into the main river system, that's an obvious area anyone can find. And what happens is, you'll idle over there, and there'll be all these fish that migrated back into there will be on that part of the ledge. You'll have these massive schools of fish there. They'll have massive schools on these humps and things like that. What I look for is much smaller secondary ditches. I'll go down through here, or I'll look for depressions. So if you're going down the ledge itself, say just south of this area, if you're idling down through here, if you find a little inside turn or a little outside turn or a bump out or something a little different about a ledge along that area, that can be absolutely key. And what will happen is there'll be a smaller school of fish. The big school might be up here, but a smaller school of fish might be in one of these little areas tucked away where you can kind of beat down on 20 or 30 fish. And one thing I always, I don't just beat down a ledge school, especially if it's a smaller school that I find. I try to catch a few fish out of it, and then I'm gone. And I'll come back and catch a few more fish out of it, and I'm gone. I like to cycle schools. Another thing is these secondary channels that run back, these ditches, there'll be individual stopping areas along these ditches. So like right there, right here, those are obvious stopping areas. When those fish are moving out or they're moving in, they're going to be stopping there. It's still a ledge. It's still ledge fishing, but you're actually not on the main river ledge. You're on a secondary channel ledge. You can even be on creek channel ledges. So those are key areas where you can catch those fish. Here's another one going back into a creek channel ledge and Chester Frost right there where those fish can kind of wad up. Another thing that, a shallower ledge, a lot of guys don't look at shallow depth schools. You'll find on a lot of these major expansive flats as you push back on through here, these really kind of secondary channels almost turn into a secondary ditch or a trough. And the ledges that are created on those troughs and those transition points, they'll keep fish on them. They'll keep fish schooled up as long as they've got bait in the area. And those can be really good areas to target as well. Let's see here. And I'll do another whole video on ledge fishing. It's going to be coming up soon. How do I expect fishing to be the next month? It's going to be awesome. It's just a fun time to go to the lake. The water temp's heating up. You got fish that are coming off a bed that are super hungry. You got fish that are trying to go onto bed still that are pre-spawn, but the water temp's rising, have their metabolisms faster, so they have to eat and eat and eat more. And so what happens is you have a lot of fish that are in the mood to eat, and they're up shallow where you can target them. And a lot of more people target them on the banks. There's tons of fish on the banks right now. So even, your average fishermen, a lot of times you'll go out and catch more fish than you normally would. You should be able to catch 20 to 30 fish on conditions like this the next few weeks out here. It looks like that one's going to be in May. That's going to be more of a ledge fishing deal, I think, for you. Michelle says thinks Saudi custom swim baits are hard to beat this time of year. That's correct. They are really good. And now's when I was kind of push away from the Kitech type of swim bait into more of the hollow body or the semi-hollow body one that Saudi custom pours. That's kind of a good time to get more realistic with it and get something that's got a good thump to it and that works better in warmer water. Strike City DMV. Interesting. He says that I think the shad spawn should still be going on in some parts of the lake, but I expect them shallow and top water to play a key. And I agree with you during the Bass Open there when you get towards the end of May. Honestly, the way things are progressing this year, I think most of the shad spawn's actually going to be over. You go way up river, you might still get on some of it, but a lot of that shad spawn is going to be gone. And shallow top water could play a key because as fast as things are progressing and as warm as the water and weather is with the sun that we're getting right now, that lake vegetation is going to grow really fast. So what will happen is you'll start getting grass on a lot of the flats and stuff. I think at that point, after the shad spawn starts to die, there'll still be a ton of fish, a ton of bluegill and gizzard shad that'll stay on those flats and that grass, and it'll keep the bass there. I think a lot of fish will be shallow on the grass, assuming they don't spray it all out. And then a lot of fish will remain deeper on those ledges. So those are always the best years. The years where we don't have grass, and I think TWRA should take a lesson from this. Hopefully somebody's watching from there. But the years that we spray grass, what happens is a lot of the fish pile onto the ledges, and they don't spread out from there. And so you get a lot of fish packed into one area. You catch a lot of fish out of these schools that are, one, beat up, they have hook marks all in them, or they're just a little bit skinny. And I think it has to do with just a food thing. The years that you have grass, those fish span out. They stay in the creeks. They stay on the flats. And then a lot of them that are committed to the ledge stay on the ledge. So they're spread out. The food is spread out. And they all seem to be really healthy on those years. And I'm not blaming TWRA for spraying the grass all the time. A lot of it is natural. When we have tons of rain like we had last year, we've talked about this in the past, it stays cloudy. The water stays dirty. The water stays cooler. And what happens is the plants can't photosynthesize if they're not getting sunlight through that water, and they don't grow as well. So those aquatic plants, really on years where you have a drought, is the best growing years for aquatic vegetation because it's low current, a lot of sunlight, and so it really grows. But I think TWRA should take a lesson from that, in meaning that when you have years with tons of rain, well, this would be a year that you should not really be spraying the lakes at all, because what I'm afraid of is we'll end up having a major die-off like we did in the 80s, and all the grass was gone. So in years that we have natural causes that are limiting or managing the grass for us, definitely not a time to spray anything, and I think that they should require no homeowners to spray anything during those times as well. Years where we have a drought and things are growing up like crazy, that's the time when they should come in and manage it. I think it should be a two-pronged approach, and I think there should be a little bit more thought going into it with some of the surveying and stuff like that. It shouldn't just be what you see out there. It should also be based on predicted weather conditions and weather conditions that you've already seen. Randy says, I wonder why we don't see anybody throwing a lizard anymore. I have no idea. And that's one thing when you get these fish spawning on these flats. You can take a little 4-inch lizard and Carolina rig it, or Mojo rig it, I should say, like a split shot rig kind of deal, and throw it out there and just drag it across those flats where you think those fish should be bedding, and just load the boat with pre-spawn fish that are going up onto the flat and fish that are spawning with bloody tails and post-spawn fish. I mean, I would be doing that. Might do a video on that, shoot some footage on it, because that'd be fun. Get the grubs and the lizards out again and go to work on them. What's up, Heath? Dang, the shad were up there. You getting ready for that tournament? Heath is going to win a boat probably in June because they're allowing live bait in the Big Bass Splash this year. So Heath is going to win a boat. I might try to twist his arm, see if he'll take me out there. Let's see here. Man, oh man. Heath, were you watching the post-game show over there or something? Give me some details, man. Gotcha. All right. Forgot what I was talking about. we were talking about mojo rigs there, but yeah, those fish once they, coming up, those fish are going to be pushing out, and any of those little stopping points, it's amazing. Even these little creeks, you get in a creek, you find a little rocky bank where those fish are using to push back, and right now you should just be able to load the boat, flipping or throwing a little shaky head or something like that. Yeah, Matt says watching the channel regular, definitely winning a boat. Yeah, Randy, they're allowing live bait, but I think it's only from the bank, and I don't really know the rules. I don't know if you can drive a boat to a location, then get out on the bank and use the live bait, or if you just have to do everything from the bank. I'm really not sure. Kind of interesting. I guess time will tell what the strategy is there. I don't know, but I've never seen or heard of that before. And I'm curious too how a lot of these guys that are using live bait are going to transport their fish. I know Heath is awesome. He builds these huge custom bank takes. So if anyone's in the market, like if you like the live bait fish, you want to keep shad. Keith can keep shad for forever in these huge bait tanks that he builds with these custom aerators and stuff. So I know if he catches a 15 pounder, he can put it in the tank and bring it over there, and it's going to be in better shape than anybody transporting a fish in a live well. But I'm curious, some other guy catches a fish on live bait and he comes transporting a 10-pound fish in a little cooler, how well it's going to do. I don't know if it's a good move on their part or not. No, I don't. It's going to be interesting to see. I think it could be a good idea long term, maybe, or maybe specific tournaments with live bait. But I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe they're just trying to test the waters and they're using Chickamauga as the guinea pig there. Any other questions from anybody? I'm probably going to pop off here pretty soon since we've technically been here an hour anyway. What? He says that was a fake news story. I got an email from freaking Big Bass Splash, though. It was from them on the same email line that they sent me the other stuff. Huh. You messing with me, Heath? I feel like I'm being trolled now. I don't know if I'm fishing the Splash yet or not. They changed it from March to June. I might fish that Big Bass Tour event. That's going to be in May, I believe. Any other questions on Major League Fishing stuff? What do y'all think about the Major League Fishing? That's something we haven't really asked or talked about yet with this audience. What do y'all think about the Major League Fishing thing? One thing I noticed in that Randy and I, we've been kind of texting back and forth all day, talking about where these guys are and things. A lot of small fish. He even commented, I think he texted me something like, a lot of these fish they're catching, you would be embarrassed to pull up to a normal tournament with. And that's true, a lot of them you can nickel and dime them with those little males and get ahead of everybody else. So it's kind of interesting. That format is causing them to not really target the biggest fish. There's still big fish being caught, and Lake Jordan in North Carolina really showed that. But the format itself, it doesn't really force the guys to go after the biggest fish there are. And it's kind of interesting, too, because there's no weigh-in, how the shows go. So I'm curious to see what they do with that format. To me, it would almost be cool if they went to a 5-fish, or maybe you got a bonus for your 5 biggest fish. Because technically they could still weigh in all the fish and, they could have that. But, maybe there should be a prize for the guy that caught the biggest 5-fish limit. It should be almost like an angler of the year kind of deal that they do with the bass or with FLW. So I like the idea. I like having the judges in the boat. I like how their fish carriers. I like how they release the fish. But if you change the rules around a little bit, you could actually bring it back into a big fish style tournament by doing that. And I think that would probably benefit them in some ways. I think they should at least try it out. Yeah. Yeah, Matt said it really well right here. He says has to be better for the fish being put back where they're caught, and I agree with that. The fish carrot, that is the awesomest part of Major League Fishing. But I agree there should be some strategies to get quantity over quality, or reverse that. I would say quality over quantity there. Randy says he thinks it hurts the angler's skills. I don't necessarily think that, because I think there's a lot to be said for somebody that can find a big number of fish and catch a big number of fish. That's always been something. I mean, ever since you were a kid and you get in somebody's boat to fish, it's always, with you and your brothers or something like that. It's the first fish, biggest fish, and most fish, every single time. It's always a competition. But there's something to be said for catching a lot more fish, and I think a lot more cumulative weight than everyone else. But I also think it's cool when guys are targeting the biggest possible fish that they can catch. They're trying to really make the lake show off and catch the biggest females out there. And so there's got to be a way to keep this kind of new, exciting format, but also kind of bring in some of the old where you're looking for the biggest fish in the lake again. But yeah, if you look at the average fish, you're talking about Chickamauga. There's tons of 4 to 6 pound fish in this lake. There's tons of fish between 7 and 8 pounds in this lake. And there's a lot of 10 and better fish. And you're not really seeing a whole lot of those better than average fish. You're not seeing a whole lot of 4 to 6 pounders at all. You're really not seeing very many 7 to 8 pounders. I don't even think there's been a fish caught over 9 yet. So it's interesting how this strategy is playing. Now, guys like Aaron Martens, what he's doing, you notice he caught his big limit of fish, but he only had 17 fish. He's the guy that would have done best in a traditional tournament setting. But I'm just curious on that. Let's see here. Steven says the commentators put you to sleep. I like JT Kenny. JT Kenny's the man. I like watching him. But I agree, some of that one guy, they got a new guy with a beard and stuff over there, and he is, I don't know, he sounds like a used car salesman. He's kind of boring to watch. That's kind of mean of me to say, but yeah, I agree with that. I think it'd be, and that's what I'm also curious about. I really loved watching the old Major League Fishing episode by episode. They kind of put everything into, an hour and a half or so of footage. I really like that. I'm hoping they're going to do that. These big, long live streams, to me, is not as entertaining as the original Major League Fishing was. I don't know. That's just my opinion, so I'll be curious to know what y'all think about that as well. Yeah, Matt, I agree. I do like the live leaderboard for everyone involved. To me, that makes the anglers kind of make decisions on the fly. The one thing I hate about the live leaderboard, though, is as soon as somebody starts catching fish, everybody goes and looks for them. Like, to me, that's the lamest thing to do in fishing. It's like you're over there, you've patterned fish. They actually let them practice now, so they've had a chance to pattern fish. And as soon as somebody else starts catching them, you're like, oh, well, my pattern's not working. I'm going to go, jump on somebody else's hole. That's like the most lame thing ever. It happens to me all the time on Chick. And I'm just like, gosh, man, that should be a rule against that, I guess, like going in there and just intentionally following someone or jumping right on top of them as soon as they start catching fish. To me, that's the dorky part about Major League Fishing, and I've seen a lot of guys do. They'll stop fishing because they're not doing well to go try to find the guys that are doing well so they can jump on their hole the next period. Super lame. Oh, heck yes. Fat Cat Newton for commentator on Major League Fishing. Everybody start a petition now. Fat Cat Newton, JT Kenny, and let's just go ahead and steal Mark Zoner from Bass while we're at it, and we'll just have ourselves a good old time. Officially would be no one would even care about the fish catches anymore. It would be all about the show. Kevin said the stream kept freezing up for him. I didn't really have any issues with the stream. I had a couple times start buffering on me, and I closed it out and started it again, and it seemed to work really well after that. Sitting here, Randy says he's tying up. What's the best braid to fluoro knot in your opinion? To me, and I've learned this the hard way, don't use braid to fluorocarbon unless you're using at least a 15-yard or 15-foot fluorocarbon leader. It doesn't handle the shock very well. If you're going to do a short braid to leader, do a monofilament or a copolymer line. Another one that's really good is that canine, the one with the nylon, just a standard canine floral. It's more of a copoly type line. Something with stretch, because otherwise you're going to shock that leader and you're only going to get a couple fish out of it before you have to retie. Yeah, Matt, I agree. I think they'll work their kinks out of their format as soon as they can. It would probably be a good idea to comment on some of these things to get them thinking about it so they can start making those change. Heath does like that Alberto. Heath can tie an Alberto knot faster than anybody I've ever seen. Steven says the FG knot. I loved the FG knot for a while, and I had it fail on me a couple of times. And I know it was my fault for tying it. Probably didn't quite get my wraps correct or tight enough. But the problem with the FG knot for me is that you don't get when you test it, a lot of times, even if it's not perfect, it'll hold. And that's not good to me, because you need to know immediately if a knot's going to be good or not. And those guys at Tactical Bass, and they got me tying that like an 11 loop is what I tie a blood knot. And that blood knot, if you tie it wrong, it pulls through right away, or your tag ends don't line up. They're supposed to be opposite each other and facing the opposite way. So if you tie it wrong, it immediately shows you that you're wrong, and you can change it. A lot of the other connector knots are either hard to tie, or they don't tell you that you're wrong right away, and then you end up finding out that you messed it up on a fish. Keith uses a Yozuri hybrid, which is a copolymer line. What's up, Joe? I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it tomorrow or not. We got held up on a job today, and I think I'm going to end up having to work for part of tomorrow. So I don't know if I can fish tomorrow or not, dude, which sucks. I really wanted to go out there and get after a few of them. So I don't know. I'm going to do my best to see if I can finagle a way to get on the water with you. Yeah, Joe ties the Alberto too. And again, if you tie it, have a little bit off, or if your braid is acting up with that particular leader, a lot of knots will fail. But again, the reason why I prefer that blood knot is it's narrow enough of a diameter, it's easy enough to tie, and it tells me if I'm wrong right away. Joe, I probably can go Friday, because I think we're going to have some rain, so I probably can make it out there Friday. If I can, we'll get out there and jump on them, see what we can do. Should be able to catch the heck out of them right now, though. All right, a couple more minutes. Anybody got any last-second questions here? Y'all been sitting here. Once again, I've done this again where y'all been watching the screen with just the dang mapping on it this whole time. My bad. There we go. Hello, it's me again. Rich says Alberto. A lot of guys like that Alberto. I really haven't given it enough time, or really enough learning. Heath, we need to meet up one day and you'll teach me how to tie it as fast as you do. He's like, see, it's easy. I'm like, okay, cool, nice. It's one easy step with Heath for tying an Alberto knot. It takes about 2.7 seconds. All right, what we got? Last questions. Get them while you can. About to close it off. Yeah, Joe says he got a 10-pounder. Big congratulations. Congratulations to Joe. I need to hit the Panda Garden over there in Dayton. Hit him up. He's the owner over there. Makes awesome Chinese food. But Joe caught his first double digit. So everybody just congratulate him in the comments there. 10.19, I believe, Joe. If that's correct, let me know. 10.19. Giant. I want one. I hadn't caught a double digit. Last year I caught 4 fish over 9 pounds. Couldn't catch a double digit. This year, still have not made it happen. Got to get one. Nice ones. Nice ones. Heath, daggum Heath. How many double digits has Heath caught? Like 20? Heath catches them every time he goes. 10-pounders every cast, right, Heath? Never give up. Rich asked what my occupation is. I work as a contractor. Specifically, I do a lot of roofing and like siding, windows, stuff like that, outdoor contracting. So when it rains, Poppy gets to go fishing. Yes, sir. Joe gets them done. Me and Joe fish a lot. Some days we do good. Some days we suck. This is what it is. 3 double digits from the bank for Heath. I want to catch me one, Heath. Give me a Chad, Heath. I want to quit throwing big swim baits and throw the big live swim baits that Heath throws. Hey! Subscribe to Joe's channel. That was weird. I had to like approve that comment. Yeah, y'all can go subscribe to Joe's channel. It's awesome because it's in Chinese. I love watching Joe's channel. It's way more entertaining than mine, honestly. But anyway, guys, hope y'all enjoyed. I know I just rambled on for forever, but I figured I wanted to talk with y'all a little bit since it's been a month since I posted a video. Got a sweet video coming out in the next couple days here. It'll probably be I think it'll be Friday I'll post that video, but I got one about mid-range cranks. Then we're going to do a video on shaky heads after that. And probably just one on just smoking some fish, because we just had the other day we smoked a bunch of fish in the back of a backwater. Had like 3 triples. It was ridiculous. Caught a bunch. So we might just do a good old-fashioned fishing video there. Steven's got some S waivers. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You'll see if he can get some. Rich said he was a commercial roofer for 35 years. Dang, son. That's serious right there. Mark, I thought you caught fish every time, Mr. Nunley. Good grief, man. I thought you caught them every cast, bro. Yeah, I need to get out. Mark, shoot me a text, Mark, because I really want to get out on the water. I know, message me or something, Mr. Nunley. I really want to get out in the water. I've been seeing you catching all these fish in Nickajack, and I feel like getting down there. I'm about ready to get away from the Chickamauga crowds and go catch some big fish. Sub to Heath Jordan. Y'all see Tennessee Fishing HD. I should have mentioned that. He's got an awesome channel. He does a lot of artificial fishing. He can fish anything. He's a really good angler overall, but he does a lot of live bait specific stuff. It's very interesting to watch. And he catches some giant fish, all the fish that I want to catch, but I'm not cool enough to fool them on artificial bait. I will hit you up, Joe. You have a good one. Keep making some good rice, my brother. Jim, you just about missed it, buddy. Yeah, I'm wrapping it up early because I started like 30 minutes early because of the YouTube was being weird and I didn't think it was even going to work at all. All right, that's it. As always, thank you for watching. I will catch y'all next time.